this is going to be edited out, but I think that we should definitely have our own in the time of post-Soviet television.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. No, I like that. We should have that as our intro.
In the times of brick phones, Tamagotchis, and curtain bangs, the 90s kids cried out for a badass. She was Xena, the warrior princess. The kicks, the moves, the nostalgia, the queerness. Xena made us gay. I was thinking that at the beginning, it's maybe a good idea to introduce ourselves. And I was thinking that maybe I can say one thing that Xena brought to my life. So here goes.
Mm.
I'm Alisa. I'm a polyamorous creative copywriter, and Xena taught me comedic timing.
Did it teach you how to do it, or how not to do it?
I think both.
Yeah, well, fair enough, fair enough. Cool. I'm Kris. I do things for work, but let's not mention that. I sell my time and skills for money.
Fair.
Um, and Xena made me interested in gay shit.
That is nice, and that is nice that uh, when you saw it, you were much
Yeah,
younger,
I think I started
and
watching it when I was like 5, 4 or 5.
yes, 4 or 5, yeah, yeah, and I was like 11, 12, and still I think you picked up on gay shit much better than.
Well, not consciously. That's the thing. Like I think I like in my head, um, Xena and Gabrielle were quote unquote together, but I
Uh-huh.
never really consciously thought about what that means. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like in my head, I didn't think of them as, I don't know, lesbians or not lesbians. Like it just not. It wasn't in those categories weren't in my head. You know.
Yeah, yeah. So when did you start? I don't know. When did you find out that lesbians exist, first of all?
When tattoo became big, so quite soon after Xena, um because I remember reading my dad's men's magazines in the bathroom.
As you
Yep,
do.
as one does. Look, the bathroom had heated floors, and it was really really comfy to just lie on the heated floor, um and very heterosexually look at photos of naked women as one does,
Of
at the
course.
age of like
Yeah.
8. um, yeah, and I remember like reading all of the interviews with the girls from Tattoo in those magazines and trying to find
Mm-hmm.
the place in the interview where they actually say outright that they're lesbians. I really wanted them to just say, "Hi, yes, we are actually lesbians," and they would never say it, and it frustrated the fuck out of me.
And they never did.
Well, because newsflash, they weren't, but
I think we should maybe like insert a little bit of a trivia fact for our English speaking listeners who are we're not very much aware of obscure 90s Russian bands.
no,
So can
no,
you.
Western lesbians know about Tattoo. Trust.
Okay, so for those of our listeners who don't,
Well, clearly you care about those people so much. You should do it
okay, in the early 2000s,
at the very end of the
90s,
90s is when they first appeared, like 98, 99, maybe.
late 90s, while Chris is looking it up, I'm going to talk. A group appeared
99.
with two young girls who were singing I drove myself crazy. I need her, and we're going to escape from everyone sort of narrative. And for anyone who was willing to use a little bit of an imagination, they were clearly together. They were like, they were not even hints. They were like doing everything but blatantly saying we're a lesbian couple.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think you needed much
Yeah.
imagination. They kissed a few times also on stage.
Definitely at Eurovision, but maybe other times too.
Anyway, so I think Tattoo was the first instance of me like thinking about the category of lesbian, the identity of lesbian. But certainly that is not where I was with Xena. There it was just, two people that clearly to me were quote unquote together.
I was kind of thinking that Xena was one of the shows that aired on this channel, mainly dedicated, I think, to those entertainment series. Like STS was like more or less consistent with airing one show after the other. So I was looking up the shows that aired around that time in Russia. So they were Friends. I never were into Friends.
I don't think I've ever seen a full episode of Friends in my entire life.
Me neither. Sorry, don't cancel us. Don't kill us for that. But
You can cancel us, like
n-
who,
not our thing.
whatever.
Um, Beverly Hills 90210, which I did watch, and I have absolutely no recollection of this show whatsoever. Like, I don't even know what the characters' names are. I think there was a Donna. That's it.
I mean, it was the 90s. There must have been a Donna.
Sure, yeah.
Um, yeah, I remember Friends. I don't even remember being on.
hmm
Beverly Hills 90210. I do remember being on TV, but again, I don't think I've ever seen any of it.
They were Charmed, which again, I think I watched a couple of episodes, but I never was into that. I think Charmed is one of those that, like Friends, it's became this cult show for some people, not
Mm.
us.
Charmed. I did see one or two episodes because I don't remember who it was, but one of my friends at the time was really into Charmed and convinced me to watch an episode, and I did. And I think I decided that I hated it, like actively hated it. And, that was generally the thing that I often did as a kid. That I selected some
Things to
something
hate.
from things to hate from pop culture that I decided were bad and I needed to hate them, and Charmed was one of them. And I'm pretty sure it was like some weird internalized misogyny and femphobia
Mm-hmm.
that that led me to do that because like um Xena was, cool and badass, and those women were like they were also, I guess, badass because they're like witches or whatever, but they were kind of feminine and more girly, and I was like, that's not cool. I don't like that. I like badass women with swords and shit.
Yeah, I also remember not being into Charmed because it kind of seemed like this dynamic in a all girls high school, that sort of feel, and I had that in my real life and I didn't enjoy it.
But you didn't go to all girls high school.
I did one of my classes in Lithuania. I lived a few years in Lithuania. Was like two boys and like 20 girls.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
So
Fair enough.
so moving on with the show, there was Walker Texas Ranger.
I have no idea what that is.
It's this Chuck Norris
Oh.
breaking things with his fists, head and legs stuff. And the last thing that I kind of recalled was Baywatch, which I saw a couple of episodes, but I never was really into it. And I don't know if that's like a cult show for anyone, but maybe.
Yeah, I'd say so. They keep reviving it, no?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that that's like a thing that everyone remembers. You remember Pamela Anderson running along the beach side. And I don't know if that's what I remember from Baywatch or for numerous SNL sketches that were
Right, right,
made.
just from the ether of being alive around the time that Pamela Anderson was at the top of her game.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, but I think that all of those, more or less, like maybe with the an exception of Walker, Texas Ranger, are those cult shows. But what I'm getting at is that I doubt, maybe I'm wrong, but I doubt that has Hercules Legendary Adventures, the original show that Xena kind of was a spin-off to,
Mhm.
was this cult show for such a large amount of people. So I don't think that it was as cult as Xena in the end.
Yeah, and definitely in the long term, given that Kevin Sorbo just kept exposing the best qualities.
A human being can have.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just like a consistent piece of shit of a human being.
But he's so disappointed with wokeism.
Disappointed. If you don't know this meme, go to YouTube and search Hercules disappointed, and you will not be disappointed.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, and like make sure to read the description of the video because it's not just him saying disappointed; it's why he's saying disappointed.
Oh, yeah, that's legendary. But apart from that, Hercules the Legendary Journeys were not so legendary. And I don't want to go like so much into trivia, but I, in preparation for this episode, I
Mhm.
read a little bit about why Robert Tappert, one of the creators of I think both Hercules the Legendary Journeys and Xena Warrior Princess, why he wanted to go that route
Mhm.
is that he was very inspired by Hong Kong cinema and those acrobatic war, yeah, yeah, those
Oh,
acrobatic
I can see
battle
that.
scenes. And he was thinking that I want to
Mhm.
bring more of that, but we cannot bring more of that because Hercules is such an all-American hunk and he just punches things. He cannot scream and do triple pirouettes in the air and then punch someone.
I mean, I would kind of love to see that, to be honest, but yeah, it would be like a one-off episode, like that episode where he became a monkey or a
Yeah.
pig, or then like first a monkey and then a pig. They at some point they ran out of ideas, so I was like, let's just keep turning him into different kinds of animals.
Yeah, I remember what he was called in Russian. He was Svinyakal, but I don't remember what was the word.
Yeah, it was Svinyakal for the pig and Makakal for the monkey.
And I'm sure the English puns were as funny, but we just don't know them because, yep.
I mean, sometimes because the Russian language is a little more flexible than English. Like the structure of the word itself could have been better in Russian. You know.
Maybe, yeah. But that was super funny. But apart from that, yeah, he was not very much suited to that kinds of epic battle scenes, and thus they wanted to introduce like a free episode arc of Xena Warrior Princess and Hercules, and then make a spin-off. Which I guess actually also like running a little bit ahead of myself is one of the things why we love Xena Warrior Princess and what makes it so campy are those
Mhm.
insane battle scenes with those kicks and screams and
So extra.
yeah. So I think that that's a good segue to actually get into the episode 1. What is it called? Homecoming.
Uh, no, Sins of the
Sins of the
Past, I
Past.
think.
Okay, yeah. Sins of the Past. And we are introduced to Xena's Sins of the Past pretty early on, right? We have this establishing hero shot, which I loved, by the way. It's like looking at it now, it's like The Last Samurai, her on a horse.
Yeah, but the Last Samurai came out later.
Yes, so The Last Samurai clearly derived something from Xena Warrior Princess.
Yep, yep, sure.
Yeah, and we have the intro music, which I think that this is one of those nostalgic things that is really engraved in your brain. And if you asked me like the day before yesterday to sing this Xena music, I couldn't. But when I heard it, of course, my body remembers it.
Aw.
And basically, at the very beginning, we see Xena enter a looted village, and she asked some orphan hanging around what happened, and he says that Xena raided the village, right?
Mhm. And, like, I wonder how common women warriors are because he just sees a super badass warrior woman and he's like, "Well, duh, this is not Cena. This is one of the 100, 500 other warrior women that I see every day." Like seems like it just does not phase him at all. But he does have this like really supernatural idea of who Xena is, kind of like in our flag means death. Shout out to our flag means death. How people assume that Blackbeard's head is made of smoke and that shit. It seems like this boy has a similar idea of who
Yeah, she was
Xena
like
is,
riding the
breathing fire
the
and
the,
shit.
the burning chariot and things like that. Um,
Yep.
yeah, I loved it. I loved this legendary description of Xena, and also loved how he was asking her for food. She said that food is scarce everywhere, and then he tells this sob story, not actually even trying a lot. And then she's like, "Okay, here you go, kid. Have all my supplies that I have on me."
Yeah, but also like, do we know why food is scarce? Like, what what happened?
We don't. Like, it's supposed to be land of plenty. Like,
Yeah,
it's a land where there are olive trees and fruit trees everywhere. I think that in this world building, most of the villages are inherently poor just because we need to pity them, and when warlords loot
right.
them we need to pity them. So I think that most of the villages are pretty poor and just getting by with little to no food or supplies. I think that very rarely do we
Mm-hmm.
encounter rich villages or towns.
Right. That's true.
So Xena gets scammed by the kid, and then you have like this early established that list that I want you to recount. I really liked it.
Um, yeah, so we do see quite a lot of flashbacks, first of all for Xena during the time that she's evil. And like she looks quite awesome being evil. Like they're not really trying to make it look, I don't know, that disturbing or kind of repulsive. Like you look at her ra- pillaging and destroying villages, and you're like, hell yeah,
That's
that looks that looks great. It's kind of um doing the American History X thing of like, yeah, this is an anti-Nazi movie, but you're making Nazis look pretty cool, pretty
mhm.
awesome. Like, I don't know, I don't know whether you're aesthetically you're following your message,
Yeah.
but anyway, um, but because a lot of those shots of her doing evil shit end up in the intro title, like of like, look at Xena, Xena is awesome, and here are images of her murdering people for no reason. Yeah.
And also look at her boobs.
Oh yes, it is the 90s, so of course we need to ogle her body in the intro. But before we hit the intro, we see like a scene that kind of establishes who Xena is, and also establishes Gabrielle. What that scene gives us as information is A, Xena doesn't need weapons to be awesome. B, Xena is hot. Um, C, Xena finds Gabrielle hot. Like she immediately looks at her and is like, "Oh yeah." And D, and that kind of follows what you mentioned about those Hong Kong movies with impressive choreography, is that she has a hell of a
Oh
split
yeah.
because she stands right in front of the guy and she manages to like kick him in the face somehow, several times, I think. Um, so all of this is important information that will be quite um, representative of what the rest of the series is. And also we find out that like the weapons can fly and aim all by themselves. Like a bunch of spears and knives and swords are kicked into the air, and they like
Just hit their target. Yeah.
land. They hit their target. They land uh, directly, like facing down with their most dangerous part. Yeah, which is also um, yeah, as you mentioned before, adding to the campness of it all.
Yeah, yeah. I think what I loved most about this first fighting scene is that we don't see Xena's punches. We just see the guy's head flying in whichever direction, and we hear the punch sound. So it's like Xena is giving invisible punches. Basically, she's that good.
And of course, we get the signature Xena move of like holding onto a pole or a spear or something, like something in the ground that she can hold on to, and like run around everyone and do her like chanting thing. I cannot reproduce. I kept trying as a kid also to reproduce that chant, and it has never happened for me. But it's kind of like at Arab weddings, that's how women chant to like celebrate. So that's clearly where it comes from. So interesting. I don't know, I haven't read anything about the history of why they decided to um
Make that sort of battle cry.
yeah, battle cry, exactly.
It's very hard to mimic, although it's very distinctive. We're going to insert it here so we can enjoy it
Yeah,
all
yeah,
together. Yeah, and here we're also introduced to the chakram.
yeah. We'll find out that it's essentially made out of adamantium because it like it cuts the swords in half essentially, and like bounces from one to the next. So it can fly in any direction. It loses none of its momentum. It essentially like is alive. You know.
Yeah, yeah, it's a little bit of a magic carpet in Disney's Aladdin
Mm.
is alive and has an agenda of its own. I think,
Yep.
yeah, it seems that chakram also is one of those magic creatures.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then we finally get to the narration with "In the world of ancient gods."
Warlords and kings. I mean, it's great. You cannot go wrong with the in a world narration.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's super great. And like also I was comparing it yesterday. I rewatched Hercules the Legendary Journeys narration and it had a similar vibe, but it's not similar. It is like with
Mm.
Hercules, it's like, oh, here's like this all American guy going around saving everyone. Isn't he cool with his shirt open? Yeah, and with Xena, you kind of feel more more momentum, more
Mm.
epicness of the moment.
Also, is it ever so? The series is called Xena Warrior Princess. Do we ever find out why the hell she's a princess? Like, princess of what?
No, we don't. I think maybe later in the series, as we're going to rewatch, we're going to revisit that. I think later in the series it is addressed a little bit, and I think it has something to do with her probably being related, allegedly being related to Ares.
But that makes her a demigod. That doesn't make her a princess.
Yes, yes. I don't know.
Yeah, that is weird.
We are in Gabrielle's village with all the maidens who were saved, and Gabrielle is chatting Xena up, and we're going to get to
Mm.
that. But what really surprised me in this scene is that we meet Gabrielle's dad. I had no recollection of that. I recalled that we know her sister, and her sister is going to be a recurring character. But I had no
Mhm.
recollection that we meet Gabby's dad, and he's like just chucked up to the side. I guess this is the episode of meeting the parents.
Yeah, that's true. But like he doesn't matter in the story at all. Like
No.
we meet him, but we could also have skipped him entirely and that wouldn't have made much of a difference.
We care for him as little as the disposable fiance.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Which like one of the first things that Gabrielle says when she's back in the village is a she like establishes that she has a massive crush on Xena,
Obviously.
and yes, um and B, she really, really doesn't care about her shitty fiance.
I mean, why should she at this point? Yeah, it really, she has this very Meg Ryan vibe of like, oh, this is my fiance. He's introduced on screen just to be chucked away. That's it. That's done.
I'm less familiar with the Meg Ryan oeuvre than you are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's just in Nora Ephron movies. Meg Ryan often has a love story like closer to the middle of the film that is going to be
Mhm.
established, but she always, in contrast with other single gals like Bridget Jones, she always has a disposable fiance that she needs to put aside to go to her real love.
Okay, I see.
Gabrielle is trying to impress Xena in every which way.
Yeah, yeah, she's like, "Oh, I know where Amphipolis is. It's in such and such area. I'm really into geography."
Oh.
Like, oh, sweetheart. And also, so you mentioned Meg Ryan, but also Gabrielle has this like Disney princess thing, like kind of like Belle esque,
Hmm.
where she's like, "Oh, I'm not like the other girls. I don't fit into this village. I'm destined for bigger things."
Yeah, yeah, I read.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's just, it seems that she's going to burst into song about this poor provincial town.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Yeah, but
Um,
Xena so far is unimpressed.
Yeah, yeah, and like she throws a little line to Gabrielle when she's telling Gabrielle not to follow her. Um Zena's like, "Oh, you don't want to make me mad now, do you?" And like the face that Gabrielle makes, she's soaking wet immediately.
Yeah, it's great to rewatch it with those kind of eyes, because I think I watched Xena a couple of times, but I never start with the first episode of the first season. I always go further. So to see those things sprinkled in at the very beginning of the series is actually great.
It's especially interesting because it seems like the subtext was kept as subtext also for the actors.
Mm.
Like they weren't necessarily told explicitly, okay, so we can't have this in the text, but this is exactly what's happening, just so that you know what to play. Like I don't think that's how it happened. I think the scripts were, suggesting some things, and I'm sure the showrunners and the directors didn't prevent it, but they didn't like explicitly discuss it, from what I understand. Like in the original Ben Hur,
Hmm.
there was a scene that had some subtext about the two men having been in a relationship before, and one of the actors like explicitly knew that that was the subtext of the scene, and the other actor didn't,
Oh.
and like discussed it with the director. But here, I think neither of them necessarily were doing it on purpose. It's just followed so naturally from the text.
That's cool. But like, yeah, you have at least two very big subtext lines in this particular episode. We're going to get to the second one.
Mm,
But yeah, it's interesting how did the actresses pick those things up, because in the later seasons you can clearly see them playing a love story already. But like, it's, I guess, after some shit that has gone down, it's hard not to pick up on that.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, then we get to our villain of the day, with Draco, who is actually, after having watched this episode, a pretty good villain.
He's a pretty good villain. He's really hot. Like, we immediately established that Xena is hot, but there's some gender equality happening there in terms of sexualizing warriors, because Draco is a total hunk. Like, I think we barely ever see any shirts on him.
No, well, why would he wear shirts?
Yeah, he can like catch arrows shot at him with his bare hands. Sure, yeah, okay, and when Xena and Draco first see each other, the first thing that they tell each other is like, "Oh, you look good."
Yeah, yeah, because it's established that there has been some, at least some attraction from Draco's side. We don't know whether anything happened between them or not.
Yeah, but it is kind of established that he tried doing something, or he like got kind of violent with her, and she responded and gave him a scar. So like clearly there was at least an attempt at something um that Xena was extremely not consenting to.
Seems the case, but also he Draco has some sort of code of honor in a twisted way, which is a nice touch.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So then we get to the scene of Gabby escaping her village, and Leela, who is her sister, wakes up, and then they have this nice dialogue, which actually I found pretty funny when she says, "Oh, you want to be a warrior?" Leela, Gabrielle's sister, said, "Oh, you want to be a warrior? I can beat you up." And then Gabby responds, "Yeah, but you're very strong for your age."
Yeah, it's very sweet. I like that one too. And then we keep on with the I'm not like the other girls topic, but I'm not like the other girls is colored in a certain way where she says like, "Oh, I'm different from everybody else in this town." And immediately after that she mentions the prospect of marrying Perdiccas, her fiance, is one of the reasons that she wants to leave. So, I'm different from everybody else in this town. Gay. Yeah, she means gay.
Yep, yep. I guess that's where establishing here. Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, she manages to sneak out
Right.
and go follow Xena, who is riding along with her gender changing horse, as we found out.
The correct term these days is gender fluid.
Yeah, yeah, it's a continuity error that apparently at the beginning, Xena refers to Argo, her horse, as a boy, and then in the
Mm.
later seasons, and when I was watching it, I even clocked that because I distinctly remember in the later season Argo being a mare. So I guess that
Mm.
at some point the screenwriters were like, we need girl boss energy here. We cannot have any male companion even if it's a horse.
Yes, nice. I like that. So, also, it turns out that Argo has this like spidey sense of danger because I'm gonna use they to refer to Argo.
Okay.
They don't want to cross a bridge that looks totally normal and empty because they sense some danger. And lo and behold, on the other side, there is a blinded Cyclops, and we find out that it was Xena that blinded the Cyclops, and they encounter each other. And it's the 90s, so Xena uses her magic chakram to pull his pants down, and then he like gets tangled in his own pants and falls down. It's sure, yeah, this is the series that later produces Joxer, so I
Yeah.
guess the writing was on the
Yeah,
wall.
yeah, it's a little bit of a Benny Hill sort of humor going on with the Cyclops. But also, I really like to note that Xena blinded the Cyclops instead of Odysseus, who is also going to appear in the series, as far as I remember,
Mhm.
because I think almost all of ancient heroes and historical figures that are more or less known and are connected with ancient Greece are going to appear at some
Oh
point,
yeah,
or
and even some that aren't.
and even some that aren't. But it's nice to have this kind of collection of historic or legendary deeds that were actually done by Xena and not by the heroes that we think they were done by. So yeah, Xena
Mhm.
blinded the Cyclops instead of Odysseus, and then we have Gabrielle following her, and we have this very touching scene of her afraid of crossing the bridge. So I guess it's like tells us how sheltered and how um unacquainted with the world at large. Gabby really is.
But like with bridges,
Yeah.
Gabrielle doesn't want to walk on a bridge, and like it doesn't look like a bridge that's about to collapse. Like it's not Golden Gate, but it looks fine. And she's like, "Oh my god, the bridge is gonna hold me up. The bridge is gonna hold me up." Like, chill out.
Yeah, well, if it's the first bridge that you're crossing, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I felt that was a little bit weird that she would be so spooked by it.
I don't know. Maybe like in a mythological sense, a crossing of the bridge of like point of no return, that sort of thing.
Sure, sure.
Gabby tries to chat the Cyclops up so the Cyclops wouldn't eat her. So first she's name dropping. She's like, "Oh, Xena is my best friend," and
No, she doesn't say that.
no.
No.
Okay, what does she
So
say?
Gabby gets captured, and she starts negotiating with the Cyclops.
Okay.
And um, first, she tries to scare him off by saying that she knows Xena.
Well, she's name dropping.
And
Yes.
yes, but she just says that she knows
Yeah.
her. And Cyclops says, "Well, yeah, if you're her pal, I would enjoy eating you even more." And she's like, "Well, I didn't say that we were friends. I said that I knew her, and what I actually am doing is that I'm about to go and murder her." And Cyclops is like, "Huh? How are you? You're like a tiny little girl." I don't know how he can tell,
By the smell.
but sure, yeah, she smells small. Um, and he's like, "You're such a innocent looking little girl. How are you gonna murder Xena?" And Gabby says, "Well, that's the point. She'd never let a man get close enough to do her. But a young, innocent looking girl like me, I would totally catch her off guard." Interesting, interesting.
Yes. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that upon this watch.
Hmm.
So yeah, then Cyclops and Gabby negotiate that Gabby is going to bring the Cyclops Xena's eyes. So that would make a really nice appetizer. And then the Cyclops is like, "Oh, I would appreciate if you bring me a leg too." And Gabby says, "Oh, well, she has two of them, right? You'll get both." And they part.
Yeah, yeah. We get to see how good Gabby is at just bullshitting her way out of dangerous situations.
Yes, yes, and I think this is my favorite Gabrielle, and I think that now I can appreciate her more than I did when I was watching it when I was really, really young, like a teen. Because I think I also had a little bit of that internal misogyny of like I don't like girly girls, and that I think I kind of appreciated Gabby much more later on when I rewatched the seasons, and I kind of regret the loss of that Gabrielle closer to like I don't know end of season 3 season 4 where she becomes very serious and somber.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. We'll get to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
At that point, Xena is being tracked down by Draco's men, and there are three men on three horses. So one man, one horse, very traditional. And they see her, and then they lose sight of her, and somehow in the meantime she manages to like go up the trees and jump from the trees onto first one horse and like kick the man off of that horse. The two people in front notice none of that. Like a man being thrown off a horse just does not alert them at all. So she does that again. She does that a second time with a second person. And again the one guy at the front just notices none of that. And finally she just says, "Hi, I'm here." And he's like, "Oh shit." At which point she uses her signature five finger death punch.
Yes. Yes.
Well, not quite, but she like pokes him in the throat, and apparently that like cuts off the flow of blood to his brain.
Yes, and she mentions that she is
Yeah,
very aware of the functions of human body for a person who lives in ancient Greece.
Right, right. But she's like about 1,000 years old, based on different time periods that she gets to experience throughout the series. So, maybe she has amassed all kinds of skills and bits of knowledge across those years and epochs.
Yeah, yeah, I guess. And we will have a backstory for the five finger death punch. So yeah, but it's
Yep.
nice to see it so early on established in the series. Um, yeah, so after that we see Gabrielle trying to get to Xena, and she lies in the middle of the road. So a person would luckily not run over her, but would stop his carriage, and she would try to also chat this, I guess, traveling salesman up to gift her a lift to Amphipolis.
Amphipolis.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed this character and enjoyed that Gabby tried to kind of chat him up in very different ways. She invokes the gods. She says that she is a very good conversation maker. And then at the end, she says that she took lessons from a traveling bard and tries to sing about Oedipus. And then it
Hmm.
we find out that the traveling salesman knew Oedipus personally and can tell all sorts of things, because that's one of the lessons when you catch a ride from someone, that the taxi drivers would rather tell you stories than listen to your stories.
Fair enough. Even though we'll later, on like a minute later, find out that the dude actually didn't know Oedipus personally, but he's just so excited about the opportunity to impress Gabby with his acquaintance of him, that he's just like, okay, okay, get on. I'll tell you everything.
Yeah, that was a nice touch. I enjoyed that scene.
Hmm.
Then we see beautiful landscapes of New Zealand representing ancient Greece, which is actually a great match. And Xena arrives home, and her mom, spoiler, does not is not impressed by that. Doesn't want anything to do with her.
Yeah, yeah. The mom is immediately like, "Get out! You're not welcome here." Which I think is not a surprise, given that up until that point, Xena has been a murderous warlord. But still, she's sad about it, obviously.
Yes, and it's even darker than that, because the men of the village gather around and they want Xena gone. And at some point, it seems that they're going to, I don't know,
Stone her.
lynch her. Yeah, and mom is just leaving with, "Do what you will with her," which is
Yep.
a very stern contrast on what we're getting at the end of the series.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a short interlude with Draco again being an awesome villain, and fighting with his, I guess, his scout, who were supposed to follow Xena but actually spilled the beans because he was introduced to the five finger death punch. Um, and it's kind of compelling how this insignificant character tries to kill Draco in various ways, and uh, Draco manages to kind of fight him off very quickly, and at the end kill him with the dagger, and then he just says, "Clean my dagger." And then again, we are back in Xena's village, and Gabrielle again showcases her negotiating diplomatic skills.
Yeah, because Xena is about to get stoned, and Gabrielle runs to her rescue and convinces the villagers not to stone Xena, because that's just not going to be helpful. Even if they get the revenge, they might anger Draco, and he would unleash his wrath on them even harder. So she manages to convince them that if Xena just leaves, it's going to be better for everyone.
Yeah, yeah, and at the end, it's also a funny bit where I guess, this elderly of the village, he says, "Just get Xena out of here," and Gabby's like, "No problem."
Yeah, yeah, she's happy. She's happy just to be with Xena. It doesn't matter where.
Yeah. Then we get a short conversation with mom, which is also dark, and Xena's mom is basically denouncing her. We have a short
Mhm.
scene in Xena's brother's mausoleum.
Which is like a pretty fancy mausoleum. Like it's a big room. There are torches. It's like well decorated. The casket itself has like skulls embedded in it. They put some money into that
It's
shit.
like ancient Egypt vibes.
Yeah, a little bit.
So yeah, but it's not very well kept though. And there's like
It's dusty.
it's a touching scene between Xena and Gabrielle where Gabby says you're not alone, and I guess that the friendship kind of has its first flourishes there. And I don't remember how we get to the fighting scene at the end of the episode. Where does it happen?
So Draco comes to the village, and apparently the village elder arranged a meeting with Draco to be like, "Hey, we
Mm.
have stuff. Let us give you stuff, and then you don't murder us." And then Draco's like, "What's the fun in that?" Um, so he's about to start murdering, and he's about to start murdering in part because they wouldn't tell him where Xena is because they don't know. And that's when Xena appears and says, let's figure it out between us. Let's hash it out." And then they have the fight, the main fight.
The main fight, and the main fight also is very much those Hong Kong um movies style where people are flying in the air and the fight
Mm.
happens on those elevated staffs. So it's very theatrical, but it also is cool that we see, much like a D&D character, Xena growing and becoming mightier, because at the very first episode she actually, of course, defeats Draco because she's Xena, but
Hmm.
she has some trouble defeating Draco. And then later on, as the series progresses, she gets closer and closer to a superhero who can take down armies.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, at one point during the fight, they start fighting on, like, standing on the people below them, which is interesting because, like, I get why some random villager would tolerate Xena standing on them in order to win the fight, but like the people that Draco's standing on, they can just like,
Shake him off.
I don't know, shake him off, sit down, like anything.
Yeah, yeah. I was also thinking of that, and I was thinking maybe they're afraid because if Xena loses, maybe they do not want to be the guy that caused Draco to lose. But yeah, that's his idea, and like
Mhm.
it really seems that bad guys walk all over you because he's just like stepping on everyone's heads, and then everyone is like,
Right.
"Oh, Xena, have my shoulder," and I think she tries to get to like stand on shoulders the first few
Mhm.
seconds of the fight, but then she's also walking on heads and making turns on heads. So yeah, and there's a nice touch of Draco's minion actually helping him up a couple of times because Draco is about to fall and the minion is like catching him and throwing him back up. And
Mhm.
he does it two times, and the third time, Gabby uh makes
Trips him.
sure, yeah, trips him, makes sure that the minion falls, and this way
Yep.
Draco does not have an unfair advantage anymore. Haha.
Yeah, nice. Or I guess they both have people helping out with the minion for the Draco and Gabby for Xena.
Yeah, yeah. So the fight is over. They make a pact that Draco, she spares Draco's lives, but Draco is going to leave, and the minion shows his ugly face one last time and tries to kill Xena, but Draco actually kills him before and says the deal's a deal.
Right, right. Not fair.
Do we have this character come back? I don't remember.
Draco?
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah. It seems like a waste of character if he doesn't, because they built him up to be quite cool.
Yeah, yeah, and the actor is cool. As I mentioned before, very very hot.
Yeah.
And it also is like an interesting example of like somewhat race blind casting
Hmm.
in Xena, which we get also later
Yeah.
with a few characters, um, because the guy who plays Draco is of Samoan heritage, as far as I know, and we it's never addressed. It's just like that, and that's like a nice touch. I don't know how common that was in the 90s to just like be like, oh, yep, and this guy is going to be a person of color just cuz.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty rare thing still. It was a pretty rare thing still in the 90s. So it's we can say that Xena is an early adapter of blind casting, was like another reason to love this show.
Oh.
But then we get to the conversation of Xena and her mom, which is, in my opinion, there are certain characters in the series who are victims of the plot and victims of the screenwriters. And I think that Xena's
Mm.
mom, like they did her dirties. She does not have a character of her own. She just has those generic strong woman qualities and generic mom qualities, sometimes one or the
Mhm.
other. And her kind of she's very blatantly, oh, either I hate Xena and I denounce her as my daughter, or I see her fighting for us and oh, I'm suddenly super cool with that. And I think that that's not the first, like not the last time where the screenwriters kind of did this character dirty, because she's very inconsistent. And if you consider her a real person, this person is psychotic.
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely some emotional whiplash with her. At the end of the episode, we see um Xena and Gabrielle kind of camping out together. Xena begrudgingly agrees to share her fire with Gabrielle and to let her sleep next to her. Wink, wink. And and there we see, I guess, subtextually, um, Gabby telling Xena that she's kind of gay, but assuming that Xena isn't, because Gabby says, "I'm not the little girl my parents wanted me to be. You wouldn't understand." Um, interesting, interesting. But as we later find out, of course, um, they're both quite gay.
Seems that Xena is more bi and Gabby is quite gay from what I remember of the series, but I may be wrong.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, we get a lot of heterosexual moments with both of them. It's something that the showrunners had to do for the facade of this not being a lesbian show being maintained.
For sure, for sure. But like it seems that with Xena, we those plot moments that she has with male characters, like even with Hercules at the very beginning of her origin story, it seems more genuine. Whereas
Mm.
every time Gabby has some sort of heterosexual um, shenanigans going on, like she's either like betrothed to someone that she doesn't want to marry, or there is this plot with her husband who gets killed off by Callisto the later seasons, but there was also zero chemistry between her and that dude. It's all, oh, I just need
Mm.
to do that.
Right, right. Interesting. Well, I guess we'll see how it goes as the series progresses.
But do you think that it makes sense as a first establishing episode?
Absolutely. I feel like it gives a lot of important establishing facts about the two main characters. We immediately know exactly what each of them is all about, what their main conflicts are, and what they might give us in the later episodes. So I think it does a really great job of that.
Yeah, I also thought it was pretty good as an establishing first episode. First episodes are very often throwaway, and there's a lot of narration and like, oh, let us just explain to you how this works. And I think that here they managed to do that uh, gracefully without boring us too much or like invoking those plot crutches too much. So, how many chakrams out of 10 would you give this episode?
Um, I would give it a solid 7. I
Hmm.
think it's not the best episode ever, but as the first episode, it does exactly what it needs to do. And while it's not perfect, it has some funny moments. It has some exciting moments, and generally, I think 7 is fair.
I agree. I agree. 7 for me. Like, there are absolutely fantastic episodes to come, which
Oh
are
yeah.
much better. But yeah, as the first episodes goes, this is a solid one. And I hope the same could be said for this podcast.
Yeah, yeah. We'll see what the public says.
If there is going to be a public, that's the first test, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, thank you for recalling Xena's first episode with me.
Did you say Rue calling?
Recalling, oh god, we're going to, after we switch this thing off, we're going to discuss season 15 of RuPaul's Drag
Okay.
Race. But for now,
Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll come back to your headphones in the near future. That sounded just right, very natural. Um, love that journey from you.
okay, bye.
Bye.